Hello, everyone around the world. Welcome. Bienvenidos, que calos irfete, to Coloring My Way Across the Globe. I'm your host, Lauren Battistini, color consultant, artist, language learner, and world traveler. Join me each week as I chronicle the most colorful people, places, and experiences I encounter off the beaten path, both near and far. So, let's go. Vámonos, que pame. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. It's me, your host, Lauren Battistini, and today I am particularly overjoyed because I have the privilege and honor of interviewing a guest who happens to be in the exact same occupation as me. And so we are going to literally geek out today all about color, literally architectural color. Today's guest is an esteemed certified architectural color consultant. She has been referred to often as a paint unicorn. Her name is Lisa Jenkins. And Lisa, let's get started. Welcome to Coloring My Way Across the Globe.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Well, I am so delighted that I was able to schedule you in between projects. I know you're quite busy doing things both locally where you are and across the world. So I thought a good place for us to start today would be for you to tell my audience a little bit about your career trajectory and how you got started in the field of architectural color.
Right. It was by accident.
By accident.
Yes. What proved to be an accident turned into a lifelong career, and I couldn't be happier. Yeah, after college, I went to school, grew up in the Midwest, went to school at University of Nebraska. And after college, this is in the mid 90s, of course, a million years ago, I moved to Scottsdale, which all Nebraskans do.
Mhm.
Once they can leave. I went out there to look for a job and I answered an ad. And this is when we, had old-fashioned newspapers. I answered a job ad that said company car and laptop. And I'm like, oh, I need both. I didn't say the name of the company. So I showed up to the interview and they said, it's Sherwin-Williams and we want you to call on Walmart. You'll be a Walmart rep. And I'm like, Walmart? I don't even shop at Walmart. I was such a snob. And yeah, so ended up I got that job and it was the best job I've ever had. This was pre cell phones. So my territory was Arizona, Southern California. So I went from coast to mountains pretty much every week. A little bit of New Mexico, a little bit of Utah, a little bit of Nevada. So I went through the most extraordinary places because there's a Walmart in every one of these little towns.
Yes, and those are very colorful routes, by the way. Just beautiful
Exactly.
landscapes.
Exactly. So every 6 weeks, I go through Sedona and hike. I went on the most amazing hikes, and yeah, that's how I started. I taught who I lovingly call the Walmartians how to tint paint and sell paint, and that was in the faux finishing era. So there was a lot of this is how you sponge paint, and this is how you color wash. So all that faux finishing that everybody's covering up now, that was me.
You did that back then.
I did that. Yeah. Lots of demonstrations. So yeah, I started with Sherwin-Williams. They make the Walmart paint, obviously. And then I kind of moved up with them. I was with them for 10 years, relocated to North Carolina. I was an architect and design rep with them. So then I worked with the interior designers and architects on specifications. And so this is where I learned, I had to know the chemistry of the paint. I had to know the specification side, like what's a two-part alphatic urethane? Like ridiculous things no one should have to know, but they're in my brain. Yeah, and then when the recession came, I got laid off, and then I became a painter the next day. I'm like, well, might as well paint because nobody's hiring. So I interviewed and painted for like 3 years, and then I went to Israel, and then there's a long story here, isn't there?
Yes, and we will definitely we will cover Israel as a whole separate topic in just a moment and
Yes,
your worldwide color specification. But
yes, yes. But anyway, I'll shorten it up to what happened in the last 5 years. So I was kind of on my own doing color consulting, doing painting and sort of this middle range. I renovated a couple houses in there. And that's when I formed Lisa Jenkins Color, like my own LLC. And that was about 2013. And then in 2017, I started working for a local Benjamin Moore dealer here, chain in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live now, and just loved that job. It was everything that I had learned in the last 20 years in my lap. And I got to redesign showrooms. I got to do color marketing. I got to do training. There was a lot of leeway because they're independent owners. They're
Yep.
not corporate owners. So yeah, they really, relied on me because I'd had that sort of corporate ownership knowledge. So that was up until COVID hit in, I think, March, very beginning of COVID. So February, March of 2020, I got laid off. And then again, the next day I became a color consultant. And I said, well, I'm not getting on a plane, that's for sure. So let's see if we can have a go at it.
Yep.
And what started as a big experiment is now my career. So I've been doing it on my own now for almost 4.5 years. And I didn't know if I could make a living at it, but oh my gosh, it's been an amazing ride. And I feel very, very blessed to get to do what I love, but I also get to see, people get stressed out. It is a real big deal. You know what I'm talking
I
about.
do. I do. And I just
Wine
appreciate you.
bottles and Starbucks and like color chips. And I was like, I can't do it.
Oh yeah, well, for my guests who happen to just be tuning in and might not know this, I myself am a certified architectural color consultant, and that's why I wanted to interview Lisa today so that we could sit and talk shop a little bit. And Lisa, I have to say that where our experiences intersect is through Benjamin Moore, because I also had some kind of collaboration with Benjamin Moore. And as you said, they're independently owned franchises. So there is some leeway and creative freedom that you have there as a partner of Benjamin Moore. So you and I have that in common. And what we do, we have in common. But I'm so impressed with your resume because you have this scientific knowledge and chemistry knowledge of the components of paint, which has its place. It's very important for the
Yeah,
functionality of space and to know which products to specify
yeah,
alongside your color knowledge. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to interview is because your knowledge base is so amplified.
yeah,
And so I thought a good place for us to sort of delve into is your experience in Israel, where I read on your website how you mentioned that this is when color takes on some more sacred meaning. So please
yeah,
tell us about your Israel experience and why you were there and
yeah.
what you did in the realm of color.
Yes. So I was very, very fortunate to be able to be part of this program. It started as my hometown synagogue in Omaha has a sister city of Akko, which is just north of Haifa in Israel. So near the northern part of Israel. And Akko is a World Heritage Site. There's actually a city underneath the city. There's actually more remains underneath that city. So there's 3 levels of cities, and the third city is just not even being excavated yet because there's thousands of antiquities in Israel that are just under the land, under the sea, that are being preserved until the
Hmm.
funds come available. So anyway, that's how I was sort of connected. I went there with the intention I wanted to move to Israel, and I thought I better live there first.
To make
Or, I just go on a whim because I had gone for a visit the year before, and I came home and I cried for 2 weeks because I missed it so bad. I was like, oh my gosh, I found home. And the tomatoes are amazing.
as a side note.
As a side note. So it was called Partnership Together. It was funded by Israel Antiquities Authority and UNESCO, which are in charge of the antiquities or the preservation projects in Israel. And they brought in people from different disciplines all over the world. So as an example, I in my housing unit where I stayed, there was a guy from Charleston, South Carolina, who had a PhD in paper restoration, and he was working on the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, I also became friends with a woman. She was a doctorate. She studied ancient Semitic languages. So she was decoding some kind of ancient Mesopotamian hieroglyph. I'm using the
Oh,
wrong words now,
that's
I mean,
right up my alley as a language learner. I love that.
smart people. And then there was another one from Romania. He was a composer, and he was doing something with Hebrew or Yiddish. I can't remember something. So anyway, it's just this big mashup of different disciplines of people that come into this city of Akko to help bring their ethnicity and their talent to help preserve this amazing part of Israel. So if you Akko is equal parts of Muslim and Israeli Arabs and Jews. So it's a different dichotomy there in that city than many of the other, Israeli cities. So,
Hmm.
so what I did is I scraped paint. That's what I tell people. What'd
Okay.
you do in Israel? Scrape.
I know you will elaborate on that. You
I
did
will.
more than scrape paint.
Yes. So there's what happened and what I was in charge of was Shai Farkash was he was sort of the lead conservator of the painted decorations, they call it painted decor in Israel. So in the turn of the century, 1910, the Ottoman Empire, it went from Ottoman rule to British rule, and there was a tax on estate. There was an estate tax, so people had these just magnificent motifs painted on their ceilings and their walls, and the synagogues had them. If the with their tax for that, so people would come in and they would paint over it so that their property looked less valuable. So our job was to identify where those properties were and then pull all that old paint off to reveal the original motif. The biggest project I worked on was in the old city of Jerusalem in, I think it was the Syrian synagogue. And they had actually called in a master preserver from Russia because it was so delicate. There was like, I think 8 or 9 layers of paint on top of the original motif. And there's words can't describe what this looks like. So it was a 10-year project. And I was there at about year 3. So I had like basically one of those things that you would get at the dentist, a little scalpel, and itty bitty little piece of paints came off. And as I was doing it, the hours go by and I would get a little bit bigger section, a little bit bigger section, where at the end of the day, after about 8 hours, I could see the full motif of one of the lions. And it just took my breath away. I'm like, wow, I have made it.
But what an experience and what a
Yes.
unique role you played in this historical preservation. Did you have to do color?
Yes.
Did you do some color matching or color
I
specification?
did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. There was a renovation of the train station in Jerusalem, and this was sort of a little project, but yeah, I got the funny thing is, I had taken I think I took my Benjamin Moore fan deck or something. I had just finished a project with Ace Hardware, so I was familiar with their color system, and Ace Hardware is in Israel. So strangely enough, I knew exactly where to go. But
Yeah.
I specified colors for this new train station motif, which is actually a replication of the original. But we had to kind of color match and do a little research to get it correct. They're very exacting about their preservation, very exacting.
I would imagine so, and they would need to be. It's an important, it's not just a cultural thing, it's a religious thing, it's sacred. It's
Yes.
important to preserve from an historical and cultural standpoint. So kudos to you for being involved in that project and doing some very important work in historical preservation and then new color specification.
Yeah.
So this leads me to another question for you, and this is going to be a fun one because you've worked with multiple paint brands and you've had many roles, one of which has been to name colors. And I laugh at this because some of the colors I see in my paint specification world the names of the colors don't necessarily match what I think they would be. And
Right.
so I'd love for you to walk us through the process of naming colors, some projects you might have been involved in, and any interesting or fun names, color names you specified. I want some stories.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so when I was with Sherwin-Williams, I worked on a project. Some of these we would call them regional palettes. So the historic colors of Charleston, we did a sister palette to that based on the old city of Mount Pleasant, which is the just across the river from Charleston. And I don't know if have you ever been to Charleston?
I have. Years and years ago, I was in charge of the southeastern United States territory
Okay.
as in the telecommunications industry, so I had to travel all around that area. So yes, it's beautiful
Okay.
there. It's really beautiful.
Beautiful. But Charleston has a distinct smell about 5 o'clock.
Okay, I
And
don't.
it happens as the tide lower, all of the seashells and the little sea creatures, come up and they start to, they're a little bit pungent, and it makes this sort of mucky, slimy, brownish mud. They call it fluff mud. So it's very distinct Charleston smell and name. So one of the colors that I was able to I got to name on that palette was called Pluff Mud, which is very funny. And all the Charleston residents really love it because when tourists come into town, they'll say, "Oh, what is that smell?" And they'll
Uh-huh.
say Pluff Mud, and then they'll have to go Google, and they'll just send them on their way.
That's funny. That's
Another one that was really fun is Jekyll Island is off the coast of Georgia. Uh,
yes.
yeah, very famous place. I think the Federal Reserve was made there. It's the first telephone call. It was the summer place for the uber rich in the turn of the century. So the DuPonts, let's see, who else was in here? The Pulitzers, the Vanderbilts, they all had summer cottages. These summer cottages are 30,000 square feet, but
Yeah, that's
so
large.
we were doing a very big project. I was sent down there to help them revamp their color. They preserve, of course, they were preserving the cottages to be as true to form because people, tour through there. So I was to go document the colors, and then with Sherwin-Williams, we would create a palette based on the original cottage colors. And then, we would fill in some blanks sometimes when, if you have a palette full of blues, corals, and yellows, you need a couple more tans and whites and so forth. So I was working with the whoever was the head, and he would take me through these cottages, kind of tell me the story or the folklore of the cottages. The Crane Cottage, which is beautiful place. The Crane is they developed the toilets. If you remember, like a crane
Yes.
toilet. So back in
Hmm.
the turn of the century, they were in the toilet business, and that's when, if you remember, the toilets were kind of pink. They had different colors, but pink was a predominant crane colored toilet in their cottage.
And wasn't it like a shell, like a blushy shell pink? Am
Yes, it was
I okay?
actually quite on trend right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my funnest color name. I called it and it was this beautiful blushy coral pink, and I named it Heir to the Throne.
Heir to the throne. I like that. I like that. So color naming is a huge process. And then
Mm.
do you have to receive approval from some committee when you name these colors, or they just entrust that job to you and think Lisa's going to handle it? We'll let her do it.
When you're doing a big palette, so for instance, when Benjamin Moore launched their whole new color preview in 2001, 2002, they
Yes.
came out with, I think, 1,800 new colors. That is a lot of going back and forth with legal.
Oh, most
There's
definitely.
Yes, there is marketing involved, and marketing people are not necessarily color people. So it's sort of a mishmash of all these different entities naming colors. And I will say that there is a lot of names that come about in a lab, meaning, if you look at a color standard in under fluorescent lights in a lab, and then you take it outside, you're going to have two different colors, right?
That's exactly right.
So I can't tell you if this is why. I have no empirical data to back this up, but many of Benjamin Moore's colors are called gray. And it really, really is a little bit tricky for a color consultant because it's hard for a client to see past the name. It
That's
truly,
right. It is.
I
It
tell
very
them,
much is.
I tell them this is an adjective to describe a wavelength. So please discard.
I like
Please,
the way you say that. An
yeah,
adjective to describe a wavelength. Well, the way
yeah.
I speak with my clients, I explain to them that all of these neutrals, I predict, predominantly specify neutrals in a lot of homes,
Mhm.
at least for walls. I specify bold colors in other capacities, but I always tell my clients we've got different undertones of gray, we've got different undertones of beige. So a color might be called gray, but it might have a lot of violet in it.
Mm.
It might look a little bit taupe even, or it might be taupe.
Yeah.
So the color names can be a little bit deceiving, but I find it funny as I look through the palettes because I specify Benjamin Moore, Sherwin-Williams, Farrow and Ball,
Mhm.
PPG, you name it, depending on what the client needs. And so the color names don't always match what we think they would be classified as. So
Right. And this keeps us employed. So,
most definitely, most definitely. And let's talk for one second too about the psychology. Well, before we talk about the psychology, let's talk about, you mentioned legal. And one of the reasons why legal has to be involved is because you really can't name a color, especially in this socio-political climate we're in. You cannot name a color that would be offensive to some groups, or you just that's where the legal department, I think, comes in. Am I right? In
yeah,
part,
yeah. And in fact, a case in point is um, Benjamin Moore had a very popular historic color called Sandy Hook Gray
I knew you
that,
were going there. Yep,
yeah, been renamed. Yeah. Isn't it
exactly.
interesting? Yeah.
It
And in
is.
fact, Dior Gray, which gorgeous color. I don't know if Christian Dior had anything to do with it, but it was renamed charcoal linen just a few years ago. So I don't
because
know
it
if they,
was
don't know why. I suppose they
because
got in
maybe
trouble.
some legal issue with Dior, maybe we don't know. Who knows? So, switching gears for a moment, since we get to geek out today all about color, a lot of times on my
Mhm.
show, on my podcast, I'm talking metaphorical color with people and having a colorful life. And you and I will get to that too. But you and I today get to talk about actual architectural color. And it's
Yeah.
something I preach every day, all day. But why, in your opinion, is our profession of architectural color so vital to the success of any project, a commercial project, a restoration project, a residential project? Why is our work so important and vital to these projects?
Well, I would say number one, because paint takes up a lot of real estate, and you can do a $200,000, just say on a residential side, 200,000 new kitchen. But if you get the cabinet color wrong, ugh, that's a bad scene.
Yeah.
On
It
a
depreciates the value of the home too if you're trying to list it on the market, for example.
Exactly. And I mean, you can tell, I don't know if you have anything in your market, but you can immediately tell when you're looking at a, I don't know, 12-story, 50-story building that's been, maybe the colors are off. You can't look past the paint.
No.
I think that's the cornerstone of it. So it's very expensive to get wrong. And you and I have both been on projects when there's a big repaint involved. And I think that's important. But because color is elusive, when we talk about color as science, that's the actual fact, right? This
Hmm.
is a wavelength. It is an illusion, actually. It's bouncing, it's the illusion of what the person sees of this object. It's bouncing, it's light bouncing back. So you cannot separate your own experiences from that illusion. So a client might say, "Oh, this peach, I love it, but it reminds me of my grandma's dining room, and I hated that." She can't get past that. Now that color is peach. And case in fact, it might even be called like windy gray or something,
Right, right.
right? So there's not only sort of a personal expression of that, but there's just the physical expression of how the light, what color is, and it's light and wavelength. It's a measurement. So in saying that, you can't really put it in your hand and say this is gray and this is purple and this is blue, because there's factors that affect that. Not only your own personal experience that your own personal bias that you're bringing into it. So
Hmm.
it's hard to sort of track down.
It is. I like that. I like that you called it elusive. And I always say one of the things I love about color is it's rebellious. It really does refuse to be categorized. And I say this because you said this earlier. Scientifically, we can categorize it on a wavelength and we can know where it fits in the three dimensions of color in the Munsell system, for example. But
Hmm.
the moment you take that color and you paint it on one surface, and then you
Hmm.
take it and paint it on a whole different surface, those colors will have a completely different look. And then that's not even factoring in all the different light that we
Right.
might shine onto that surface. So
Yeah,
color, it refuses it refuses to conform and to comply. And so the best that we can do, I think, as professional architectural color specifiers is we select colors that work in conjunction with all of the other finishes and elements and that convey the marketing message that we need those colors to convey, especially on a commercial project. When I say marketing, I mean those commercial spaces need to be filled with the right kind of tenants. Well, we need to specify color that will draw in the right clientele. Wouldn't you agree?
absolutely. Without a doubt. Yeah. And I mean that's called metamerism. That's one of the phenomenons of why color changes. It's when you paint it on a flat surface, you get one color. If you paint it on a textured cover surface, it'll show another color. And then if you change the sheen of, let's just say we're talking architectural paint, there's a whole nother layer of light reflection that comes in.
That's
I like to
right.
throw those words out sometimes in,
Yeah,
in
I throw the word metamerism out with clients every once in a while and then
yeah,
explain it, but it's not an everyday, it's not part of my everyday vernacular with
right,
clients.
right, right,
You see, the metamerism changed the
right,
color, the way the
right.
color looks on this surface.
Sometimes they like to know fancy words. I said, this is very fancy. This is insider knowledge.
Well, that's right, very inside. Well, you know who of all my clients, it's usually the analytical, the engineers, and the
Mhm.
accountants who get very I don't want to say obsessed, but extraordinarily interested in the intricate details of color science. And so they ask a lot of those questions, which I can appreciate. So speaking of clients and our work, why don't you walk us through a day in the life of an architectural color consultant or a few days, because no one day is the same.
It's true. I would say predominantly 90% of my business is residential. So I help people pick paint colors. That's my whole job. Um, so I would go to an appointment. I have set up in my car, I have a little paint store in my car. So I have all of the large, what we would call the designer or architectural color samples that are provided by Benjamin Moore. Work predominantly out of Benjamin Moore because I just know the palette so well.
Yep.
Um, and then I have all of these sort of 3,500 large architectural samples. And then on top of that, I use painted color boards that I do myself. And those are 12 by 18 inch that I've already rolled them out in an eggshell finish. So I have probably 400 or 500 of those, a ridiculous amount of colors. And all
Yep.
those color pints I have, those color samples I have in my studio. So I'll make 3 or 4, let's just say gentleman's gray. That's a perfect color. That's perfect example of a color that is absolutely not gray. Gentleman's, I mean, extraordinary color. Anyway, so I'll make, 4 or 5 of those. Those color boards make me a very good color consultant. It makes me smart. It makes me
Yep.
efficient. It
You
helps me
know,
connect.
let's stop there for just one moment because again, our worlds intersect. We do the same thing, much of the same thing. I utilize those painted color boards myself, and
Yes.
especially on exteriors when, for example, the brick is not changing, the roof is not changing. I'm not specifying those materials, but I'm only specifying paint. And so we need to make sure that whatever paint color we utilize really does coordinate to all of these other elements that we know are not changing. And
Mhm.
so the painted boards come in really handy. They're better than paper samples. They just are.
Yeah, I wouldn't do my job without them, honestly.
Nor would I. Agree.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt, but a day in the life of.
Yes. So after my appointment, then, we'll kind of walk. Let's just say I'm doing an interior project. In fact, I'll talk about the one I just did yesterday. Um, old home meaning it was done in the 2000s Mediterranean era. So lots of those Mediterranean colors that we're all turning into off-white.
Mm-hmm.
We're white doving around the world. Um, yeah, they had some cabinets that were really creamy. So we were trying to parse the house out in in phases and finding stopping areas where we can stop this color here and start here, but still maintain, marry the creamy cabinets with the house. So kind of a challenging ordeal. But I plugged in a 3500 Kelvin light bulb and we solved the creamy cabinet kitchen problem. By just changing the light bulb, we were able to fix it instead of what she thought she was going to pay $10,000 for a cabinet repaint. So I was a big hero yesterday.
You were a hero, and
Yeah,
this underscores the importance of utilizing the right lighting in conjunction with our paint colors and the paint color
right,
specification process too.
right. And I will
So,
say this is a good time for me to kind of explain how I'm different from an interior designer. Is that number one, I'm going to work with your existing furniture, your existing structure, so forth, where an interior designer is probably more interested in creating a space for you with furnishing textiles, etc. That's the
yes.
number one thing. Number two, designers have to be good at 100 things. I have to be good at one thing, and I'm
Hmm.
very good at it. And it's a very specific element of the design process, paint, which if you ask any interior designer, they're like, oh my gosh, I just do, they insert color name here. I just do white dove everywhere because
It's not their
it's
specialty.
scary. You're right. It's scary to go outside of that little comfort zone. And I appreciate that absolutely. So that was just a mention that, and the I don't know, $300 whatever the consult was for this person, quite literally saved them $10,000 repaint.
Magnificent. I'm over here smiling, Lisa. I'm smiling. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice because basically you and I do the same thing. And so you are,
Yes,
as I hear you explain what we do, it's refreshing to hear it come from
yes,
somebody else because I spend so much of my time explaining to people that in our industry of architectural color specification, we're sort of at this crossroads or this intersection between architecture, design, and construction. And we are just specific to colors, materials, and finishes. And I love how you said that you like to utilize items and materials people already have in their home, and you're not there to do a full design overhaul. That's not why people are typically hiring you. So thank you for clarifying and defining what it is that both of us do on a daily basis.
yes. My pleasure.
I appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk a couple of other things about color, obviously, but you've traveled so much, you've traveled extensively, and I'm wondering if you can share with us one or two stories of places you've been where you found that color was utilized either very, let's say, flamboyantly or
Mhm.
very interestingly. I'd be curious to hear your opinions.
Gosh, I keep thinking of the Southwest. I guess I'm more enchanted with the world, with the colors of nature than anything, and then how they repeat themselves through history and through textiles and through sort of the ethos of just being a human. Um, I think of the Grand Canyon. I think of the Navajo Reservation and those Navajo blankets, and
Mm,
just the pigmentation and the care. And it might take 10 years to make one of those blankets, if I understand correctly. Um, Portugal was pretty cool with their fancy painted doors. Fancy, I use that word a lot.
love, love those. I've
Yeah.
been to Portugal. I went last year and I took so many pictures of doors.
Yes.
I really did because that's the kind of art I like. I do art on the side. You do too. We'll talk about
Yes.
that in a minute, but
Yes.
I love painted doors.
Amsterdam is like that. The Czech Republic, I would go way back when I was a senior in college. I did a study abroad where this was 94. So this was 4 years after the wall came down. So they're going from communist gray to, all the colors you want. And I was there in that part of in that part of history where the students I was going to school with started under communism and were graduating out of communism, and them trying to learn, and the whole society trying to learn how to sort of adapt this Western lifestyle. And paint was a huge thing. This was before, of course, I knew I was going to be involved in this color. I thought I was going to be a journalist, right? That's what I
Yeah.
school for. But I do remember having these conversations with some locals about they were painting their doors of their shops. and like how wonderful and what a beautiful experience it was that they get to choose the color of their doors of their shop.
What a great story. I love how color provides this cultural backdrop and it brings joy to people's lives. I feel like, don't you feel like we're in a happy business? We make people, our job is to make people happy with color, really.
Right.
I
And
love that.
and we get to be a part of and I'm sure you've experienced this where people you walk in and they are overwhelmed and you walk out and they are excited.
Oh, yes,
That is a good
most.
day.
Well, and I know you're an extroverted, very friendly person like I am. And so I'm imagining that this also happens in your consultations. I wind up making friends with my clients and
Great.
they serve me coffee and snacks. I meet their
Yes.
dogs. Do you know
Yeah.
that well, this is funny. I have more pictures of myself with my clients' dogs than I do have of like our after projects because as you know, we get so busy in life and we move on from one project to the next. And a lot of times our clients don't really necessarily want their homes photographed. So, but I have a lot of photographs with people's dogs. So there's a
Yes,
personal element to what we do. It's very relational.
absolutely. And you're in their business. You're going into the bedroom and
Yeah,
closet,
exactly.
see their little girl's underwear stacked on the kitchen counter. And so it's like you're
Right?
kind
You've
of
seen it all. You've seen it all at this
yeah.
point. So, speaking of the personal element of our work, I'd like to shift gears to you and your personal life. And you've had a personal journey of healing, and I think you're still going through it. And we spoke about this before, and you gave me permission to address this on the
Yes,
podcast. But we
yes,
talked about the loss of your brother and how your life now has shifted to it that, pre his loss, post his loss,
yes.
and how this has even informed some of your art that you do. And so, if you don't mind sharing with my audience, to the extent that you're comfortable, a little bit about your personal journey and this grief and how your work has helped you move through this a little bit.
Yeah. And and thinking this has been almost a year and 4 months, I guess, since the passing of my little brother. But when I look about the trajectory of my life and my career around color, it's just sort of this, I've understood it's sort of this new chapter of me understanding color, a new relationship with it. It's more spiritual, a spiritual relationship with color and paint. So the quick story is I went home for summer vacation last June, so June 2023. And I say that I was Lisa before June 22nd and Lisa after June 22nd. I'm forever changed.
Mm,
Went home for summer vacation. And during that, the day after I arrived, my brother died suddenly in jail. And he was an addict. So he had a tough road on this earth plane. But that somehow I was strangely um, intertwined in his passing, in his ascension. And I've spent the last year and a half trying to figure out what that is. But it was both a religious experience, a metaphysical experience, a supernatural experience. And I talk to him now more than I ever talked to him in, the last 30 years. So as a result of his passing and everything happening, I came back from the Midwest, back to my home in Charlotte, and I walked into my house and now it's just me and my pup here and everything kind of fell on me what happened last month. So I went into my studio where of course I have all this paint that I make these color boards for designers. So I was like, I'm just going to pour some paint on a canvas like I saw on YouTube, and I'm going to ask Ricky, was his name. I'm going to ask Ricky, he's like, tell me what you see. What are the colors? I hear that they're different in heaven. Tell me, show me heaven. And that was the first one I did. And it was like, I knew that the water, this premise that we're mostly water, right? And we hold information, water holds information. I've read that book, Messages from Water, from Masaru Emoto, where it shows the different crystalline formations when you say different words to water. So I knew that I was trying to get him to kind of speak to me through the paint, through the water and the
mm,
paint.
interesting.
And wouldn't you know, I saw these are called paint pours. So there's no tools, there's no brushes. You just pour paint on there and you move the canvas around. And what came out was angels and the cosmos and cells and rivers, and as if you were looking down from space onto the earth. And it was fascinating how the paint would take on these natural geometric shapes that you see in nature. And it took me down this road of I say that I went to mystery school in the last year trying to understand what was happening. Like, how could this canvas that I just poured paint on end up looking like the tree outside my door?
Mm.
So probably 300 um, paintings later, I started doing these for other people who had lost a loved one. And so I call them memorial pours, where I say a blessing, or I'll kind of what we call charge the paint, or you put a blessing into the water like you would bless food or you'd bless the wine. I'm just blessing the paint with
Hmm.
whatever intention I want, connect with the loved one of this said person. What would you like this person to see? What is the message you would like to bring them? And so it's kind of divination that I'm doing. It has been an extraordinary new chapter, I guess, in my life. But it's also a way that I can honor his memory and help other people heal who've been through similar experiences. I think that I just sent out a painting yesterday for a longtime yoga teacher, and I think it looks like seraphim. It's very interesting and a little bit scary, but angels aren't very particularly understood that they're very particularly
That's right. They're
pleasant to look
powerful.
at.
Through the Bible, we're told that they're very powerful and strong. It can be intimidating and frightening, in fact, sometimes.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. Talk to
magnificent. They're
Elijah.
magnificent. So, well, firstly, I'm very sorry for the passing of your brother Ricky, and I'm sure that this has been a difficult time for your family. I need to say that. And
Yeah.
I commend you for taking the time that you've needed to grieve his loss, and that it's been grieved in this, I'm going to call it a creative way, because it
Yeah.
has been creative. And you've also utilized this experience to help other people and to bless them with works of art that would have meaning and purpose for them. And color is an integral part of it, all of it. And
Yes.
I think in one of our conversations previously, you said that, and I find it endearing and cute, and I
Mhm.
hate to use the word cute, but I do find it cute, the way that you said that it's almost like you personify color. You'll talk to color a little bit. And I thought I
Do.
thought that was cute.
I
I really did.
do. In fact, I apologized to White Down yesterday on that client meeting. Like, I'm sorry, White Down. We'll find you a home, I promise.
That's so funny. For those who don't know, what white down is a very classically specified color as part of the Benjamin Moore off-white color palette, and I specify it all the time. It's a nice cream color that doesn't
Mm,
have any real yellow in it, so
yeah.
it's a nice basic cream, but it does the trick a lot of the time. But so
Yeah.
you had to apologize to White Down yesterday?
Yes, yes. I walked in, I'm like, oh, White Down, this is gonna be easy. Put it up there. I'm like, whoa, that is much creamier than White Down. Sorry. So I put it right back. Had a little moment with it. Yeah. And
A
I will
little.
say after COVID, that's when I started to feel color. It was very odd. I don't know if we talked about
Well,
this.
we said that this was going to be an addendum, or that we were going to include this in the conversation, and define the word that this is. I know what you're about to say, but please tell us the word for this and then define what it really means.
Yes. Okay. Well, I hope I say this right. Sense. Oh dear.
Is
No,
it
I can't.
synesthesia? Synesthesia?
Synesthesia. Synesthesia is what I was told years later that what was happening. So I had COVID. I don't know. Thanksgiving of 2020 is when I got it, and it was probably about a month long. I was pretty sick, and something happened during this process. I'm trying to figure it out, but I think I've cracked the code that I started feeling color. So I went back into work and I'm doing color consults, and Simply White was the first one that it happened. And rarely do I get to go back into the home and see the finished project, because that's 3 or 4 months down the road, and we're in and out on a daily basis. But this was a particular time where I got it, and Simply White was everywhere, and it was not like I heard it in my ears. I heard it and it was kind of like a vibration or a shiver of some sort. It was like a vibration. I think it was frequency. Like I'm hearing it through a frequency, but
Okay.
it's not through my ears. Um, and it just gave me this sort of tingly, almost like I was getting a little electrical shock. And I was like, oh my, what is happening?
Weird, right?
Weird, yes. And I thought, I didn't really connect it to the color until it happened again and again. And then I realized to this day, when I get that feeling when I'm at a client's, I'm like, that's the color. So it has informed me.
So you're telling me you feel a specific color? You feel specific colors, you just feel them a certain way?
Yes, it is. When I'm saying, for instance, we'll shuffle through maybe three or four creamy whites, white down, let's just say simply white is a couple of them. And I'm using my color boards and I'm holding them up and I'll stand back and I'll kind of get that sensation like a little electro node has been attached to my skin. It gives me a little zip and I'm like, oh, that's the right one. Would
Okay.
any of them work? Absolutely. But for whatever reason, I'm like, you are meant for this home and for this person.
That's wild, but crazy.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're creative people, and weird things like that happen to creatives.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I think I understand is, so when I lost my taste and my smell, that energy had to go somewhere, right? A sense
Mm.
had to be create. That's what my body created, another sense, synesthesia, which is kind of the when your senses parallel or overlap. And if anybody else has any idea what's going on, I would love to hear.
No,
Maybe it's just me
I've read.
50.
I mean, I've read stories about this, and it happens in music too.
Yes.
Where people will feel musical notes or something, or they'll associate, maybe this is a different term, but I've heard of situations where people will associate musical notes with certain colors and frequencies. So there's some kind of connection there. And I'm not a scientist and that's not my realm, but there's, of course, truth to it. It's been documented and studied. So I find it fascinating that this color synesthesia, as we think we're saying
Yes.
it right, has happened to you.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Lisa, this is a great time for us to end with my favorite question. It's the one I
Sure.
ask all of my guests. But before we do that, I just want to tell you how grateful I am that you are my guest today, and I love that we both do color for a living, and
Yes.
I think that in our business, there's room for all of us to do well, and there's enough business for all of us. And so
Oh,
I love being able to just talk to you, colleague to colleague, about what we do in this business. So
yes.
thank you for
And,
that.
likewise, and to have a professional on the other end is really, really cool.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. And I tell you this, if I ever am called into a big old project and I need a second I need a buddy, a color buddy, I'm going to be calling you. You and I can do some fun, cool projects together, hopefully in the future.
Yeah.
I
You
would
say,
love it.
bring your spidey senses. We're going to go on this project to say.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I would say to you. And so it would be lots of fun. So, Lord willing, we can do that sometime. So, let's conclude with this, Lisa. My question for all of my guests is, what does it mean to you to live a colorful life?
Oh, wow, that is a big question. I don't
It's a
know any
huge
other way.
question.
I don't know any other way. What does it mean? Um, I would say through the course of the last year and a half, because of what happened, color has connected me to the higher realms, has connected me to God. And I see color differently, especially outside in nature. I see patterns differently. And the paint has taught me that we all are part of everything. There is no separation from, the leaf, the flower, the Lisa, and the person on the other side of the planet. We are all part of God. That divine spark is in everything. And that's how I see color, is that divine spark is in all those colors. I mean, and that's literally true.
I love that you gave this a scientific kind of creative answer and
Yeah,
connected it to nature and to God. So I
yeah.
appreciate that answer. And how do you live a colorful life yourself? How do you live colorfully?
Um, I do it through the paintings that I make, and I do it through by giving them away to other people and feeling their joy. I do it through my work every day. The physical career is color. I come
Hmm.
home and I think about color.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know that there's any separation from me.
Yeah, and I had a feeling that you might answer it this way because normally with my other guests, the way that they answer that question has a lot to do with color metaphorically. But in your case, in our case, color is our life. It is our line of work, and it's what we think
Yeah,
about and focus on
yeah,
constantly. So it's hard to extricate the
yeah,
physical color from metaphorical color. So what a great answer. So I will be including in the description of the podcast episode all of your contact information, but just a
yeah.
quick shout out. How might people get in touch with you, Lisa?
Sure. They can go on my website, lisajenkinscolor.com, and that'll have links to my Instagram, which I'm most active on. I do have a YouTube channel called Paint Reiki, which is the pour paintings that I do. And fun fact, side note, that name came about when I did my first pour painting when I was asking my brother Ricky to show me heaven, and I said to my phone, I translated, or I spoke into my phone, and my phone translated Paint Reiki into Paint Ricky. So I knew that had to
Oh,
be the name.
I love that. And also for the guests who they might not have heard this correctly or never heard of it before,
Sure.
a pour painting is what you're saying,
Yes.
Pour, which is where you literally
Correct.
pour the paint onto the canvas and move
Yep.
the canvas around and see how the paint shifts
Yes.
onto the canvas. So it's
Mhm.
a pour painting, Pour,
Correct. Or sometimes they'll call it fluid art.
fluid
Fluid
art.
art.
Yep,
Yeah,
I've
so
seen
they
that.
can go to at Paint Reiki on YouTube, and I show when I do a painting for a memorial painting, I'll record my process for the recipient on there. It's pretty, it's pretty low budget right now, but they can see how it's done there. And then,
No, you know what? No one cares about low budget. I'm reading a
yeah,
lot of these statistics that are saying that for those of us who are creators and we're out there trying to show our work, that what
oh
people
yeah,
want to see is they want to see authenticity. They want to
yeah,
see the behind the scenes process. They don't care if it's a fully polished video. So
yeah,
for those people who want to see your YouTube video, Lisa, it's
yeah.
Paint Reiki, but spell Reiki for those who don't know how to
Sure.
spell it, please.
It's Reiki.
Yep, that's how I just spelled it, but I didn't want to get it wrong.
Right.
So
And Reiki is a healing modality where you move and you channel energy and you move energy and the energy body.
so
So
you
I
do
was
this
like,
through
I'm
your
moving energy. Yeah, I'm moving energy on a canvas,
on
just
a
I'm not moving
canvas.
it on a body. Yeah.
That is a
Fun.
perfect melding of all of your skills and talents and passions and creativity. So I commend you for that. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here with us today on Coloring My Way Across the Globe. It has been a true pleasure.
Yes, as likewise. I'm so flattered to be a guest, and hopefully we can do it again. There's lots of extra chapters we could fill in.
Oh my goodness, most definitely. So this is season two, but I think that we will need to have you back in season three because goodness knows what kind of cool, fun,
Mm.
colorful projects you will have done by then. So and to all of my guests around the world, I would like to thank you for your listenership. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for sharing this podcast with the world. As many of you know, but some don't, this podcast has now been listened to on every habitable continent, and the number of cities tuning in is growing by the day. So I thank you so much for being such a great audience. And always reach out to me if you've got any questions or if you have any ideas for future guests for the show. And until next time, stay colorful, my friends. Bye bye. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Coloring My Way Across the Globe. I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation, and we would love to stay connected with you throughout the week. The best way to connect is by subscribing to our newsletter at www.lfbcolor.com. That's www.l as in Lauren, F as in Frank, B as in boy, color, COLOR.com. Also, you may find us on Instagram using the same handle, LFB Color, for the latest stories, podcast guest profiles, travel photography, language learning diaries, and my own colorful art. Hope to see you there, friends. Thank you again.